Hi, this is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in none other than Wingspan. Yes, this is a Stonemaier game, a game that I helped develop. The designer is Elizabeth Hargrave, so I'm not the designer of this game, just the developer and the publisher. And today is release day, March 8th. So I thought, as per tradition, I would talk about a few of my favorite mechanisms in Wingspan. So I have a couple to mention here, ranging from little subtle things to big things. And I'll start with the big thing, which is that the core engine of the game is actually a double engine, and I love that. Every player has one of these player mats, and you're playing birds in these rows, in these habitats from left to right. You could focus on just one habitat, or you could try to balance them between several different habitats. And as you do that, as you take turns within these habitats, and as you have more birds covering up these spaces in the habitats, your actions get better. So this is part one of the engine building. So if I have these 3 slots covered up, when I take the draw cards action, I gain 2 cards and I can spend an egg to get an extra card. Whereas at the beginning of the game, this is the slot that I'm using. If I draw cards, I'm only getting 1 card. So that's part one of the engine building. And if it was just that would be fun, that would be fine. But even better than that is that there are a number of cards in the game with brown powers, this brown border at the bottom of the card. And so if you have birds with brown powers in, say, this habitat, when I take this action, when I take the draw birds action, not only do I do that, but then I go left to right, activating each bird with a brown power action as I go. So you get this multiplicative engine building element where not only are you improving the engine that's built into your player mat, but also the birds that you decide to play that have brown powers, they are improving your engine as well, creating some really cool combos where sometimes order of operations matters, but usually it's just a really cool combo going from left to right. That's probably my favorite thing about the game. I really, really love that aspect of progression and engine building in those 2 different ways throughout the game. Some other smaller things that I love about the game that you might take note of as designers if you're watching this. One, I love that at the end of the game, there are a bunch of things that score you points, and 3 of them score 1 point each. And I like, so that like eggs on birds, food that you've cached on birds, and bird cards that you've tucked under other birds. These are abilities that can come out throughout the game. I really like that we chose to just make them all worth 1 point. I think that was Elizabeth's decision during the design process, because it kind of simplified things. It meant that during the game, you weren't trying to math out, okay, like a set of 2 eggs is worth this, and this food is worth 1 now, but maybe it's worth more later, or all of these are worth 2 points, but these are worth 1 point. Just kept it level throughout. Just each is worth 1 point. I like that it's level. You don't really have to math it out during the game. Everything's just 1 point. I like that. I like at the beginning of the game, there's an interesting choice. I really like what we did here. At the beginning of the game, you are given 5, and we've tested this a lot. We tested a lot of different ways to do this. You're given 5 random bird cards, and you're given 1 of each of the 5 food tokens. And then you decide which 5 of these 10 things do I want to keep. So I like that we give players agency right at the beginning of the game to make this choice of what to keep, what not to keep. But usually, like, the default decision is to align the food that you keep with at least a few of the birds that you keep. So for players who don't know how to play Wingspan, if they're learning it, they can still make a decision there, but it doesn't require them to know a lot more about the game. You can sit down, you can set up the game and say, okay, this is the first decision you're going to make. I'm going to teach you other things after that, but just, make this decision for now. So I really like that it gives experienced players a really interesting choice, and it still gives new players a new choice without burdening them with a bunch of rules before they even know how to play the game. Before they even start playing the game either. The last mechanism I want to mention, I have 2 components I want to mention after this, but the last mechanism I'd like to mention is the action selection diminishing action element of the game, which is at the beginning of the game, each player has 8 action cubes. Those are your turns. You take 1 turn, you do 1 thing, the next player takes a turn. When you're all out of those 8 cubes, you score for the round. Or you score 1 specific goal for that round. And when you do that, you take 1 of your cubes and you put it on the goal mat. I have it right here, the goal mat here. You put that cube down here. And so all players must lose 1 of their action cubes permanently because it's going on the goal mat. And that might seem a little weird. Like usually in games, you're getting more workers or more actions throughout the game. But in Wingspan, because you're building this engine on your player mat, your turns are getting more and more powerful throughout the turn. They also take longer. So even though the first round has 8 turns, maybe it takes, I don't know, 15 minutes. The last round of the game might also take 15 minutes because your turns, your 5 remaining turns, are taking a lot longer. They're more involved. They're a lot more powerful than they were at the beginning of the game. So I like that the number of actions you have diminishes, but your power level still remains, well, your power level goes way up, and the length of time remains just about the same from round to round. So there are a couple components I wanted to mention because I like mentioning components that they tie in with mechanisms. One is the bird tray. So we have this this tray designed by Game Trays that holds all the cards in the game. But we also have the lid of it has a function in the game. So you can see here the lid has 3 slots for cards. So you put the cards on the slots. And then you have the deck over here off to the side. And this does a few things that I really like and that I would love to see in other games, honestly, because one, it means that you don't need to refer to the rule book to remember how many face-up cards go on the table at any given time. The mat tells you how many to do that. The second thing it does is that often I found with when you're, like this is a thing that you're picking up cards quite a bit off of. You're drawing cards off this mat or from the top of the deck. And I found with other mats, if you put cards on a mat, sometimes you can't like get your finger under the card and it becomes annoying to pick it up. And in Wingspan, there are times where you might want to look at these cards before you acquire them, when you take the draw a bird card action. And so I like that the cards overhang off this lip a little bit. You can see like, here, I'll show you. The card fits right there on the table. And so it's easy to pick up off the table and take a look at it if you need to before putting it back on there or before keeping it. And even if you're not going to look at it, if you can see the icons from your angle at the table, it just makes it really easy to pick the card up instead of picking it up off the mat. That's component number 1 that I thought was worth mentioning. Component number 2 is that on the side of the box, we show you how to put everything back in the box. This is something we've done for a few of our games. We did it for Scythe, and My Little Scythe has something like that. It's not printed on the box. But I like that this kind of helps players. It, again, removes a little bit of a frustration at the end of the game where you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I put everything back in this box? Let me tell you, just look at the box there. Before I go, so that's all my favorite stuff about Wingspan, or that's some of my favorite stuff. I really do love this game. I'm glad that it's coming out today. I know a lot of people aren't going to get it today because we didn't make enough, but we are making plenty more. There'll be more in April, more in May, and we're going to keep making more after that as long as there's demand for it. But I did want to mention, here are those eggs. I didn't even show you the eggs. That there's a Kickstarter that I wanted to talk about because we playtested Wingspan a ton, and I wish I had this fail faster playtesting guide, playtesting journal, because it's an incredible resource. It's on Kickstarter right now. I have no direct connection to it other than that the writer of it or the creator of it, Jay Cormier, sent it to me, and it's just like everything that I want on the table when I'm playtesting all in one book. It has all these entries where you can write down what you've playtested. It always has an interesting question to ask, to think about. It has like, you write down the people's names, the time that it took, but it also has all these interesting charts. Like it has a list of all these mechanisms at the beginning of the chart. On the back of the back of the book, it folds out to give you a score chart, so you don't have to print that out separately for your game. It gives you variable distribution charts. It just has a ton of great stuff in here. And I was just incredibly impressed by what Jay put together here. It's on Kickstarter now. I'll put a link below. Again, I have no connection to it other than I think it's really cool. And if you're a designer watching these videos, it might be helpful for you. All right, those are my favorite mechanisms for Wingspan, along with a shout out to Fail Faster. And yeah, if you have any questions or any comments, or if these things trigger any thoughts you have about other games, I'd love to hear about that as well. If any of these mechanisms remind you of other games, let me know in the comments. All right, thanks.